There we go. That recording will start. There it goes. One of the things that's come up recently as we've been doing trainings and we've had some questions about H5P is that people have heard something about impressive presentation. If you go to the h5p.org website, you'll see it there, but you will not find it as a content type in your Moodle instance. And the reason is that was initially only released in an alpha version and it was never updated again, never brought to beta, and it's not very functional. It had great intentions to be able to create this really interactive and dynamic presentation type, but in alpha version, it was very, very difficult to build anything. And the team at H5P felt like it was not worth putting a lot of development resources into it. So if you see it out there on the website and you don't see it here, or you hear it come up and don't see it on your Moodle site, that's why. It's not a supported content type. Every so often you'll run into that. H5P doesn't really take the content types down off their website, but they do make it so they no longer sync with Moodle sites. So every so often you'll see that there might be something on their site that's not on yours yet. Along that same line, most Moodle sites update with a job that runs in the background, a task that runs in the background, and that task goes out usually once a month to H5P and pulls in any new content types. For most people, that tends to run on a date like whenever your last upgrade, your last site upgrade was. So if your site upgrade was on, say, the 16th of the month, then every month on the 16th, it runs that job. So if H5P releases something new on the 20th of the month, you won't actually see that new content hit your site until the following month. If there's something out there though, and you hear that it's been released, I know I'm on their mailing list, so I get the emails about all the new content. If you see that something has been released and you don't see it on your site yet, it's new, you can open up, if you're with us, open up a support ticket. We're happy to help you. It is just a background task, though, that runs under scheduled tasks. If you are a managed hosting client, so typically people who had been on the eThink side who don't have full admin, we can run that task for you. And if you have full administrator rights, you are able to probably run that task yourself. But if you needed a little help about where, we could definitely point you in that direction. So I just want to start off by saying that we had a training last night with some clients in Australia, and they were really hoping to see the impressive presentation. And sadly, we had to tell them that that wasn't an option. But that is one of the few that I know of out there that's not supported. One of the things about H5P that is kind of in line with what we see with Moodle is that the community is fairly active. So there are forums out there on the h5p.org website where people talk about these things. So if you're running into a problem with something, it's not behaving the way you expect it to, usually if you sort of Google what's happening in H5P and you'll see that it comes up with a forum. And that's always a nice resource in there because you can see what the issue was and if someone solved it. Or you can find out some information about whether or not it's a bug and it's on their bug fix list or it's a bug that they're not going to fix. They'll give you information there sometimes as well. And again, you always have us here to ask questions of. So let's share out screen. And in the meantime, while I'm starting to share the screen, are there any questions so far about what we've covered, what you saw last week for content, which included your hotspots and images, or any of the content we've covered so far? Any questions there?
I have two questions.
Sure, go ahead, Sue.
I'm seeing an awesome flexible format in my sandbox.
Mhm.
Is that something that you guys are testing, or is that something I can look forward to when we go to 4.10? Like, it's been fun to play with that because I always get questions from faculty about, can I be a little bit more creative with the format of the class? And so,
Mhm.
is this just a little teaser of something yet to come?
So this is so on our academy site, Michael and I have the autonomy to add kind of whatever we want, as long as it's something that is in the approved plugin list. And now that approved list looks a little bit different if you are on OpenLMS EDU versus managed hosting. Sue's on a managed hosting plan, so as long as we've code reviewed and cleared, we can put that that plugin, we can put it on the site and have it work. This is actually running 3.10, so we could definitely put that on your site, Sue, because you're also, I believe you guys upgraded to 3.10 not long ago, or 3.11, so we can put it on there as long as it fits. That's just a matter of the ticket. Hey, I saw this course format. Can you add it to our site? Happy to do that for you. One of the things I love about course formats is you can try them out in your Sandbox site and kind of get
Yeah,
some your Sandbox courses and get some ideas. But what you'll see on here is that Michael and I really do have the privilege of being able to add some new things. And actually, we were just messaging last night, and Michael was like, and I asked him to add this, and I asked him to add this on this other site. So we've been very fortunate that the our admins humor us so that we can try these things out and then have them on the Academy site. So when people are on here, they start to get to use and see some of these things. Um, so yeah, you can just open up a ticket suite, and happy to put that on the site for you.
perfect. My other question is, as I was playing around with um, multiple choice and single choice, I was just wondering, why could you give me an example of when I would use single choice? Because I was like, and I feel like I should have been able to think of one, but when would I use that?
So there really isn't a lot of difference between multiple choice and single choice, right? They look very similar. The big difference is I can create a single choice set. So I can have a prompt with answers and people pick one from the list. And then they can tab forward like we do in a course presentation and answer the next question in that set. So it kind of puts them together where multiple choice will list them out as individual
Okay,
questions. So
perfect.
that's really the only time it's different. I like to use single choice when and I think we will see this in interactive book. I like to use it in interactive book because I can have choices there and people just slide through a slider of different things instead of having the page taken up by several multiple choice questions.
Perfect.
So that's when I like to use that
Gotcha.
one.
Thanks.
You're welcome. All right. Anything else we could answer? Questions or anything like that? Comments?
Well, yes, I have a question. I have been doing a lot of hotspot and images work, and I have found that most of the activities are not resizable to all the desktop or uh, you can't only the slide ones you can resize to full screen, or the other ones you can't do it. No, or is there a way?
No, you're right. So I was noticing this last night too, that there are some that I'm not able to resize to full screen. I think image slider might be one of them. Definitely some of the image hotspots. Let's actually take a look at that so y'all can kind of see what Judith is saying. So most activities, we have that option to expand out to full screen, but we don't have it for everything. I think the seasonings one might be one where we don't have it. Let's come in and take a look.
Yeah, there's not one in there.
Yep. So for some of them, we just don't have that option. And hotspots tends to be image type activities tend to be that one. Probably in part, and I'm guessing at why this is, but my guess is that it has to do with how the images will render if you don't have a high enough quality image if you went out to full screen. So because of the type of file types that it takes and the fact that there's not really a specified minimum resolution on those files, if we go out to large screen or full screen and we had a lower resolution file, that image would be pixelated and not look great. I think that's probably why they don't have things go out to full screen. Michael may have some other insight on that. I know that he tends to get more into like the sizing and container sizes of things than I do.
Yeah, one of the influencing factors is sometimes whether or not the core H5P development team create and or maintain that content type. So I think we've shared this link a couple of times to their accessibility table, but this also includes whether or not that plugin's maintained by the core team. The ones that aren't are probably less likely to have that full screen option. Um, and it can be a bit of a coin toss sometimes. We should probably have a table that also shows which ones do full screen, because I think the image slider does, but the image sequencing does not. So it can really vary pretty quickly.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't have much more to add on top of that, but as an example, the image slider does have a full screen mode. That one is maintained by the core team. Image sequencing does not, and that one's not maintained by the
And
core team.
hotspot hasn't got either.
Which one does?
The hotspots
Gotcha.
doesn't have.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it was a problem for me because I have done with some more vertical and horizontal pictures, and the look was not so good. So yes, it's a pity because if it would resize, it would be better. But okay.
Yeah, I agree. With vertical images, it definitely does not work out as well when you can't go full screen. An image like this that Michael has brought up, resizing didn't really matter because the horizontal layout and the size of the image worked well for this, but something vertical wouldn't work as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perhaps in the future.
Yeah. So yeah, and they're pretty the developers at H5P, especially for core items, are pretty responsive to those types of feature requests and even responding to questions we post out there on the site. So thankfully, they are responsive. They are kind of always looking to improve things, and they do take a lot of the feedback that's given to them. So that is helpful.
Okay, I will write to them.
Great. All right. Go ahead, Bill. I see you have your hand up.
I am curious if the image size or quality is going to be overridden by what the H5P has put together. Like if I've got a 70 DPI versus a 500 DPI versus one of those super images that you'd put, that you'd actually print from, is that going to override? Do they fight? Is there anything I should know about choosing an image?
Michael and I are just looking at each other.
Oh
so
yeah,
here,
I
no,
can jump in on this one because we've had a couple of clients who've run into this, and this is
Yeah.
we were I think Amy and I have mentioned this at some point, but we also have another cohort that we're working with right now. It's going through the same course, but just with one client, and so we meet with them Monday and Tuesday, and then we meet with you all on Wednesday. They're about 2 weeks ahead in the course, but this was one of the things I just mentioned to them this week, which is we strongly encourage you to resize your images whenever possible. To give you a quick example, I know I'm not sharing my screen right here, but I'm going to try and.
Do you want me to stop so you can share, Michael?
Yes, if possible, if that's all right. Going to go ahead and just share my screen here. Take a moment or two. So the short answer is, regardless of the quality or the size of the image, H5P is going to try and fill that vertical width because of the responsive design. Right here in this particular activity, it is topping out at the actual width of the photo, which is helpful. But for most of the activities like column, like interactive book, like some of the other ones, it will make it wider and wider and wider until it fills the entire screen. We do have a bit of CSS that we sometimes add to client sites upon request that limits the overall width of H5P activities so that they don't do that. They'll only expand to a certain point. That way, some activities become a little bit more reasonable to work with. But so in terms of like the size, like the actual dimensions, it will try and make it larger and larger and larger, but it won't change the quality of the image, which can actually be a problem in some circumstances. So to give you an example, this is just a stock photo that I pulled from my archives. And though it may not look like it, this photo is print ready. That means that it's very high quality. It has a DPI of 300. So if that does not ring a bell, if that's not a familiar term, it's dots per inch. In other words, it's like how many pixels are actually in this photo. 300 is what you would want if you were printing. 72 is what you need if it's on the web. And the problem is that if I take an image like this and I use it in my H5P that's only going to appear on the web, I'm giving my users way more detail in that photo than they actually need, and way more that they might be able to even see. This image, if I could zoom in here, is enormous. Most browsers, like monitors, top out at right around 2,000 pixels. I'm rounding up a bit, but right around 2,000 pixels for most monitors. This is 3 times the size of that. And that's assuming you're filling the entire width of your monitor. The other thing is that the resolution is 300 instead of 72. That means that this image is about 10 megabytes, and it has to be downloaded completely before the H5P is going to display properly. So we have some clients that we were working with, and they said, hey, it's taking forever for our interactive books to load for our learners. It almost to the point where it looks like it's broken and it's not going to load. And it's because their interactive books ended up being 300 or 400 megabytes because they were using these really high quality images without actually downsizing them a bit before they were added into the activity. So most of the H5P activities will, again, try and take your image and fill it to the absolute width of the screen. And some will not, like this one will not. But the other thing to keep in mind is if you do have a really high quality image, you should be downsampling that so that it's a bit more realistic for web, so that it's a smaller sized image so that the activity will actually load in a meaningful amount of time for your users.
So a good line of, a good idea is continue to use the web building guidelines.
Yep.
Less is more.
Yes. Yep.
Good. Thank you.
Can you remind us the rule of thumb for size?
I think for an H5P activity, you would probably be in really good shape, like sticking to maybe about 1200 pixels for a width. I can't imagine that you would need much more than that. Again, I recognize most monitors are probably set up for at most 1080p, which is right around, if we're rounding up, 2000 pixels wide. But as you can tell in the browser, there's a lot of space that goes to either side of these. And even if a big image is scaled up a little bit, you tend to not lose a ton of quality, or at least not enough for it to be a noticeable issue to your end users. So yeah, I would say probably around like 1200 at most. And if you're able to control the DPI through an image editing program, so the dots per inch, I would stick with 72 and nothing higher than that.
Very good.
Thank you.
Awesome. I'm going to come back to a question that Judith asked in the Raise Your Hand forum this week. And her question was, can you embed an H5P inside a SCORM object? And that is complicated, actually. It's much more complicated than you would think. H5P can actually be embedded anywhere that you can put an iframe in, and that's how it would embed. So within, if you were building an articulate, you would have to be able to embed something as an iframe. One of the issues I think would happen is that the SCORM package is going to register completion and scores for things that are like natively inside the SCORM package that are part of Articulate, but not necessarily be able to pull in the scoring details and things from embedded H5P activities, just because of the way that H5P communicates that information out. So I think that would be the only potential issue there, and also making sure that you're able to use iframes when you're building an Articulate. I have fairly minimal experience using SCORM. I would say all of my SCORM experiences come in by the way of troubleshooting through support here. Prior to that, I hadn't used SCORM. We went right in with H5P because that was the need where I was. It's definitely something that we actually don't have. Michael and I don't have access to SCORM authoring software here, but we might have. We might be able to get some and see what happens. Ours would not be Articulate though, probably. Our sister company is Rustasy, and they're a big SCORM company. But I think if you're able to embed in an iframe in your SCORM, you can make it work. It's just not going to push out completion and scoring.
Okay, I will try it too, and I will tell you how it goes.
Let us know. Yeah, I'm interested in that.
I was thinking about an interactive video.
Yeah.
First of all, because we put a lot of videos on our learning content, and I find that they are quite boring in the end, because they perhaps 5 minutes videos about financial products. So it's so boring for me at least, and perhaps some interactivity would improve them a lot. So I will do one of my in this course. I will build a H5P interactive video, and I will try to import it or to insert it inside a score package. I will tell you. I will let you know how it goes. Okay.
Okay, that would be great. Yeah, I'd love to know. I know that we likely there are other people. I know we have a lot of clients who have content built in SCORM, and so they're kind of stuck with that, but they're pretty intrigued by H5P. So I think that they would probably like to be able to bring a lot of those pieces together.
I will try to do it in Captivate and in Articulate, both of them now. So
thanks.
To give it a try,
Good. I'm looking forward to hearing about it, hearing your experience there.
You.
You're welcome. All right, I'll go back to sharing out here. Um, if we don't have any more questions on last week's content, which was hotspots and image, we can jump forward. I don't know why I shared. I should have had Michael share into interactive book, which I really like interactive book a lot, but I will be quite honest in telling you that I have developed fewer interactive books. Michael built these particular examples that we have here. But there are a lot of really great ways to use interactive books. So if you're ready to move forward with that, I'm actually going to stop sharing and let Michael share so he can walk you through interactive book, and then I'll pick things back up when we get to speak the words.
Sounds good. All right. Let's get the screen share set up here. And the course should appear just in the next moment or two. I think I've mentioned this in previous calls, but if the ring around my mouse is very annoying, just let me know and I will turn it off. It's just Google Meet tends to make the screen sharing a bit small, so I found that this is helpful to let people know where I'm at. Interactive book is probably my favorite H5P content type, and what's so interesting about it is on its own, it's not really much of a type. It's more so a way to organize other types of H5P in one place, and that's what I really like about it, because it's very flexible. It could be used in a wide variety of ways, and we have multiple examples within this particular topic. We also have used the interactive book to actually teach how to create an interactive book and some tips and tricks that go along with that creative process. I'll give you a really quick demo of what this looks like. And before I do that, I just want to emphasize, a lot of our clients end up being in higher education or in the world of education somehow. And in that particular industry, budgets have been repeatedly cut and strained over the past several years. COVID certainly didn't help with that. And making the case to higher ups to say, hey, we would like to buy some SCORM editing software that even for a nonprofit or an educational license might cost $750 per person per year is a bit of a hard sell sometimes. So what I like about interactive book is, even though it can't do exactly everything that you might be able to do in a product like Articulate Rise or something similar like Articulate Storyline, you can do a lot of the things that you can replicate within a SCORM development platform for free in interactive book using the different H5P content types. And that's really one of my favorite things about it is it really opens up a lot of doors for folks who may not have access to resources for more expensive tools that can maybe do just a tiny bit more, but free is a really wonderful price. It's one of my favorites. I'll give you a quick demo in here. Sorry, I had a tab open. So there are 3 different interactive books this week. One's going to be a demo where we just took some of our training materials from Moodle assignments and quizzes and built those into an interactive book. The next one will actually show you how to create an interactive book along with some tips and tricks, some potential ideas for how you can use this. And so that you wouldn't have to reopen this book and jump straight to the 4th chapter to get to the video about how to technically create one, we also have a 3rd H5P activity that will become complete after you go through each page of all about interactive books. And all that H5P activity is just the video for how to create an interactive book. So you'll have fast access to that in the future. This was created using a content type called column so that I could add in a video and the accordion H5P content type, which I might have mentioned this on a previous call, but the accordion H5P content type is one of my favorite ways to include a big block of text so that it doesn't have to be displayed by default. In this case, one of my favorite uses is including it whenever I have a transcript for a video or an audio file. And I'll show you another example of that. But this is one of our demo H5P interactive books. I'm going to go ahead and make this full screen here so that we can focus in a bit. But this is sort of like the book activity in Moodle in the sense that you have a series of pages with content on those pages, and you have a navigable table of contents with both pages and subheadings within your pages. So whenever I use a heading style in my text, it creates a sub bookmark for that particular page. What I like about this as opposed to the Moodle book, though, is instead of just text and images and videos, I can also incorporate H5P interactive content types. And we found some clever ways to use those as we've been working with H5P over the years. One of my favorites is actually right here, and you can see this actually just blends right in. It looks like a regular image within this text, right? But this is actually the image hotspot activity that we talked about last week. So we found that taking screenshots of some of our technical documentation, then using image hotspots to incorporate additional information over top of those images has been really effective in terms of onboarding folks and teaching folks to use new tools. So that's one idea that I wanted to point out while we were in here. On the next page in here, again, we have an audio file. It's just we call it a podcast. I think it's a little grandiose for us to call it a podcast, but we'll call it a podcast. It's about 1.5 minute audio. And then again, using the accordion H5P content type, it all looks very seamless, even though the text is its own content type, the audio is its own content type, the accordion is its own content type, but it all blends together very seamlessly as if it were just one page, because it technically is to the learner. And again, I have the transcript with the transcript for this audio. So my learners who maybe they have ADHD, maybe they have a hearing impairment of some kind, and they really want to see the text because there might be an auditory sensory processing disorder or just no ability to process audio. That transcript is optionally there, and it's not taking up the entirety of my page. I don't know if you can see my scroll bar all the way over on the right and how much that changes when I expand or collapse this. So it's saving me a good amount of time. Here's an example of what we were talking about earlier with the images that I wanted to point out, which is if your image is small, some content types will try and stretch it to fill the entire screen. So even across screen sharing, you may see that this is pretty grainy because it's a smaller image that's being stretched a bit wider. The only ways that we found around this so far are either to add a little bit of CSS to your site that limits how much the content can expand, or to B, when you take that screenshot, to add a bit of padding to either side of the screenshot so that it's already a bit wide, if that makes any sense. So, the entire screenshot here is obviously this box, but if I were to add a little bit of extra stuff just to either side of it, it would be a bit smaller, thankfully, and when it's stretched, it would stretch a little bit less. So this is just something I wanted to mention because we were just talking about images. But, and you will see this again, you can also incorporate those question types into here. You can add in things like the interactive videos that you've learned to create. You can add in things like the course presentations that you've learned to create. Almost any content type that exists in H5P can be added into an interactive book. And one thing that I also really like is at the end of this, there's a really nice summary screen that will let the users know how they scored, if there were scored activities or questions within this, and they can submit this to you for a grade. So this was a really nice summary screen, and you'll be able to see a report of these as well. Again, one of the other things in this course is an interactive book about how to create interactive books. I tried to dress this up just a little bit by adding a little cover page, which is something that you can do. It adds a nice little bit of polish to it. It's not required by any means, but I think it looks nice. Let me go full screen with this one. And so we do have an interactive book about how to create those interactive books. We also have some suggestions throughout here. For example, some recommended prerequisites, some things that would be helpful for you to learn to use before you start building out your interactive book, some tips and tricks to get started. Some content type pairings that I really like. For example, that audio video with the accordion, which I've shown off a couple of times at this point. I really like image hotspots with screenshots or upload images. It's a really nice way to add additional context without making your content much larger. And I think I know that there was a page in here that I had wanted to grab, and I can't remember which one it was. That's all right. I do want to encourage you to pay special attention to the middle chapters in this book. The third one's going to be tips before you start. With interactive book, it's actually pretty easy to learn to use because you're just doing the same thing over and over again. It's really nice. There's a lot of repetition in the interface, so it's easier to learn to use than you might think. But I find that this, like some other things of a technical nature, it's a lot easier if you plan out what you want to do manually first. I call it like planning analog, like literally pen to paper. One of my favorite things to do, honestly, is just to grab some Post-it notes and a Sharpie and then get a wall near me so I can map out what I want my content to look like on the individual pages of my book, since each individual element is added separately. Like the text is added separately, the video is added separately, even though they all look like one page. So this will make more sense as you begin building there. But you can do a lot of really interesting things in here. We've included some suggestions on where you might want to use interactive book instead of some common activities like Moodle Book or Moodle Lesson or SCORM package. We've also included some ideas in here for using interactive book throughout your course. One of my favorites is a way to resolve a common complaint with H5P, which is, hey, I add these individual H5P activities, but now I have all these individual columns in my grade book, and that's kind of annoying. You could build those activities into an interactive book, and that way those grades are all coalesced into one, which is really nice. So it's just a really simple way to consolidate those grades. Two other really interesting ideas that we've seen. One client has an instructor who's using H5P or the interactive book to build out their course syllabus, which I think is really interesting. So that way they are actually using the linking feature in the content bank so that they can update it in one spot and it's updated everywhere. Makes it a lot easier when they're teaching multiple sections of the same course in Moodle. And one of my other really favorite ideas of how to use this is if you've ever looked at course formats for your Moodle site, you may have noticed that one of those formats is a single activity. And what that lets you do is it lets you make the entire course just one type of activity. We've seen some folks do this where, to give you a quick example of this, we had some where there was a self-enroll course for students who wanted to borrow equipment from a communication studies program, but they had to fill out a Moodle quiz that said, I understand that if I break this, that I owe a lot of money back to the university. So they set up the course so that it was just the quiz. You open up the course, it opens the quiz immediately. As far as they know, the quiz was the entire course. You could do the same thing with H5P. So you could set up that single activity format type so that the entire course is the interactive book. And so if you're thinking of onboarding courses or courses for, let's say, new students that might introduce them to something like library services or career services, you could build out a course that's just the interactive book as far as they're concerned, and basically creating a micro course through this particular activity. So it's a remarkably flexible tool. I know I've been talking forever about it, but I really do love it. I think it's great. And I'm really excited for you to spend a little bit more time with it and come up with some ideas on how you might be able to use that as well. So, and like I mentioned, if you go through the training book, which was the all about interactive book, you'll get access to an additional H5P content type that's just the video. The one thing that I will point out on the video, we've been trying to do this more lately, is there are chapters in the playhead. So this is going to be a little hard to see, I think, with the contrast, but if you move your mouse along the playhead, the video is broken into distinct chapters that you can jump ahead to. So the entire tutorial to learn to use this is actually only 4.5 minutes long. Believe it or not, it only takes about 4.5 minutes to cover how to create an interactive book and add content to it. The rest is supplemental information. For example, there's a spot in here about importing existing H5P activities that you may have already created, and you want to add them into your interactive book. So that's actually possible, and we give an example in the video, and then just some final pieces of advice. So the tutorial part is actually just over 4.5 minutes long, and then the rest is what do you want to do if you want to use some things you've already made. But I did want to point that out since sometimes folks miss that there are chapters down here, and it's pretty easy to jump ahead if you wanted to look at different content. And these are captioned. Right now they're only captioned in English, but they should be captioned correct with a transcript as well. All right, so I'm going to show some restraint and stop talking about interactive book, because again, my favorite content type. But are there any questions that I can answer as you're thinking about where you want to go with this module this week? Oh, the question was, is it easy to make a Moodle book into an interactive book? So there's no formal import process. You would have to manually recreate the content. But the copy and paste is pretty straightforward because the text editing features in H5P are a little bit more limited than what you would even see in the Atto editor in the book. I actually don't think that's a bad thing. The nice thing about fewer options in a text editor is it tends to dramatically increase the chances of your text being accessible by default and not having a lot of superfluous code behind the scenes that might be really rough for someone with a screen reader or navigating your site through a screen reader. So yeah, it would involve a good bit of copying and pasting, but you could rebuild it that way. And it supports the same type of rich media. You can add videos, you can add images, you can add alternative text for your images, you can incorporate, hopefully your videos are captioned, but you can always add transcript below them if you needed to. And I saw another question pop in about, does the interactive book save the progress as you go along? My recollection is it does. So you could hop in and out through your different attempts. And then I think I mentioned this earlier. Let me hop back to one that has the question in it. That's the demo one. So if you go to the demo one, this one had a question in it. Yeah, they would have to formally submit their progress at the end of the interactive book. So one thing I'm glad you said this because it's reminding me of another piece of advice I like to give. If you are going to have this be graded, like there are graded questions or activities within this, make it very clear to your learners that they do need to submit their work when they're done. They do need to come to the summary screen. They do need to click this submit report button like you would in the demo for the progress to be formally recorded and graded, especially if you have completion tracking assigned to it. In this case, I think there's just one question. Yeah, so just a simple true false that I add in as an example. All right. Any other questions we can be helpful with?
Okay, cool.
All right.
I really like that idea of using that in a single activity course. Like I can think of lots of things. Just thinking back to when I've done new student orientation and I really wanted them to focus on the school policies and things, and it's in a book, and I wanted them to go through, and we would try to have them do an attestation statement at the end. It would actually be nice for me to have had students work through this, and then at the end of looking through that book, they actually were submitting, answering some questions along the way, and then to submit it at the end, I would actually have a really comprehensive view of who'd submitted. It was all in one place. They weren't trying to like read something, because everything was in like a PDF, not trying to read it there and then find the document to submit. So I really like that as a concept for things. I also think it's interesting that Michael mentioned people using the H5P book as a syllabus. And one of the things we're hearing more and more about lately is something called a liquid syllabus. And you can create one with H5P because if you're putting it out on a website external to your Moodle site, which is kind of the theory behind the liquid syllabus, is people have access before they get to the course. So sometimes teachers put them on their own website. You can do that anywhere that you can embed an iframe. So I can put it on a WordPress site, or, if I've got a Drupal site or something, I can actually put it in that way. It is nice to use that. Couple things to know about book is that you actually can't export it. So I can't export or download the book. Obviously, if I download it, it's just going to be an H5P package. So I can't download it into like a PDF or something. So whenever I do, whether it's a liquid syllabus or in the past when we had a big period of time here where people were really into the infographic syllabus. And I know where Bill works, one of his colleagues, Hart, has done the infographic syllabus before, which was the first person I ever saw make one that really made sense. And the infographic syllabus it's an infographic of the most important pieces of the syllabus, but there was a place to click to come behind it to access the full syllabus in a fully accessible version that could be downloaded. So also that's an option too. So maybe you want to like jazz up your syllabus a little bit, but you still want there to be a version that someone can download. You can have links in that interactive book where if someone clicks it, they get that PDF or Word version of things and they could still download it. So even though the download feature doesn't necessarily exist in the interactive book itself, there's certainly workarounds. And if we're creating a syllabus as an interactive book, we've probably got a document that we're somewhere that we're actually pulling that information in from. So we can just continue to have that document sort of live in the background there. Um, and in ways that I have made that work in the past is I actually upload that document into the course. I set it to make available but not shown on the course page. And then in my interactive book, you can click the link and it opens the other version of the syllabus. So that's one way to have it all in there but not clutter up that page. So lots of different ways. I love Michael's passion about interactive book. I hadn't, before we first created this course for the very first time, we listed out all of the activity types, and we both have ones that we're clearly very passionate about. And Michael took interactive book, and the very first time I got to hear him present it, I was super excited about it because he was really excited about it. And it has been something that I've used quite a bit since then because I can put all of those different content types in one place. I have definitely, when I first started using H5P, I talked to my faculty about not creating drag and drops that had like 100 different or 50 different options on it. So they broke it down. They did 5, 10 question ones. And I was like, well, this is messy. There's like all kinds of stuff here in this course now. If we had done that in an interactive book, which was not available yet at the time, that would have made a much cleaner way for them to actually put everything in one place, like was their original intent, but to break things down so that it would still work on a mobile device. So when those drag and drop get long, you actually can't find all the pieces. But pretty cool stuff there with interactive book. Definitely has become one of my favorites as well. All right. So as we roll toward the end of this week's session here, we're going to talk about speak the words. So the speak the words activity is exactly what it sounds like. I create an activity, I give someone a visual prompt, and they have to speak that word. Now, it could be they are speaking the word on the screen, so I need them to pronounce something, or I'm giving them the English word and asking them to speak that word in French or in Spanish or in any other language. So there are lots of ways that I can actually create speak the words activities. Couple things to know though, speak the words activities are not fully accessible. So that's always a concern. You have to be verbal. So if someone is nonverbal, they're not going to be able to interact with the speak the words activity. And so that's the primary accessibility concern there is that someone who is nonverbal is not going to be able to participate. Likewise, someone who has a significant speech impediment may not have a good experience using a speak the words activity because when we build in which words are accepted as input, they're read phonetically by AI in the background to decide how that should sound. And so it's hard to sometimes build in something that isn't can replicate a very strong accent or a speech impediment or something along those lines. But if we look at the speak the words activity here, this first one, we are asking people to say hello in French. The other thing to note is that this activity, speak the words, only works in Google Chrome on a desktop, laptop, or Chromebook. It will not work on a mobile device like a mobile phone. It's not necessarily going to work on an Android tablet. So it is pretty limited, only works in Google Chrome and only on desktop Chrome, laptop Chrome, or a Chromebook. Um, and it does not work in Microsoft Edge or Safari, whether you're on a mobile device or laptop desktop. But the question here is how do you say hello in French? And we would push to speak. And I would answer here because I'm talking, it's going to tell me I'm wrong. It's registering everything I'm saying now, but it is listening. If I pause for a minute, what it should do is actually register what I'd said. There you go. And it's going to say that's incorrect. Obviously, it hears me speaking. But if I retry, bonjour, I get the correct answer once it registers. So what's happened is I've actually just put bonjour right in the background when I created this, and it's reading that. It does help to bring in some it does look some at accent, so it is accent tolerable to some extent. Clearly my French accent is terrible. All the years of French I took, that was the part I never mastered. But it was able to recognize what I was saying. I've also had native language speakers speak into this, or accents wildly different, and it still marked us both as correct. This is a speak the word. So this is just one word, one prompt, someone speaks it, and they move on. The other activity is a speak the word set. So now I can create several words in this or several small phrases that someone needs to say as they're going through. This speak the word set here is about regional differences. We'll give it a moment to load. But we are able to go through and speak a couple of different things. So here, we start the course. So it shows up kind of like a course similar to how interactive book or branching scenario starts, and we have to click to start it. And we have the first app option here to say the word picture. And what you're going to notice is along the bottom, there you go. Along the bottom, you have some dots. That tells you how many different words or opportunities there are to speak something in the set. So you might be looking at this and say, okay, I pronounce the word picture. So I pronounce this picture, but some people pronounce it pitcher. And either one is going to be accepted based on how we set it up in the background. Pitcher. And that comes up correct because regionally throughout the US, how this word is pronounced is different from place to place. I learned things like this for the very first time when I lived in New Jersey, and something was like diagonal from my house, and I called that kitty corner. And in New Jersey, they called it catty corner, and I was very confused for a little while. Or radiator. There was a difference there. And this is a place only 2 hours from my home, from where I grew up. But it reminded me that regionally throughout the US, there are, and I'm sure this is true everywhere throughout the world, there are differences. So this one here, I pronounce this GIF, and the kids tell me this is GIF, and I'm pretty sure I'm right and they're wrong. But that will be a battle to go for the ages. GIF. And that's still going to come up okay because the correct answer on the backside is spelled GIF, which would, in theory, we would think that would be GIF.
I've coded this one for GIF and GIF just so that no one had
Yep.
hurt feelings.
Yeah.
But I'm also on the GIF train. So
Yeah. So as you go through things like this word, it's Ben or bean. There's a couple of different ways. So there are different ways that we're able to put in. This allows people to have to say something in different ways. We decide what's considered acceptable input. So for this particular one, Michael built this in. There's actually 3 different options in the background here for this one. But the speak the word set allows us to give people a number of items, one right after the other, that they're able to input here. The water one is my favorite because I thought, how do you spell out some of the ways people say water? It's trying to think phonetically. It's pretty interesting. But as you can see, there's some words that are pretty common here. Roof, right? So there's different ways that people say it. And we are able to set that up in the background. If I have completed something and I've put input in, the dot for that particular option turns to a solid light blue. Solid dark blue is the slide I'm on, and anything that's gray is somewhere I have not put input in yet. So you'll be able to try these out this week as you're looking at them and push to speak. Things I really do like, the things that are tough about this is the limited accessibility here, right? So in addition to this only working for people who are verbal, and it only being able to work on Chrome. Now, to that, for me, that's not a huge disadvantage. It certainly is for some people, especially those using Edge. Safari is problematic for many different types of software, but specifically for things where we have audio involved. For people who've been using Moodle for a while and you have that ability to do record the short snippets of audio and video right from the Addo toolbar, that has historically never worked in Safari. That is a bug that I believe has been fixed or is getting fixed very soon, but that's not actually a Moodle bug. It's all related to how Safari handles that type of input in those files. And so often whenever we have something where someone's going to need to speak in, or we're bringing in some audio, Safari doesn't work. When I make recommendations to people, I often will say, please tell your users not to use Safari. Other places that we run into problems with Safari have to do with the screen reader. There's a screen reader that people can use if they're on a Mac that can be kind of native. It's supposed to work with Safari. It does not work well with Moodle and a lot of other software. So for me, like, the Safari piece isn't a huge deal. but many people prefer to use Edge over Chrome. Some people only have the option to use Edge and they don't have the option to use Chrome. And that's where this becomes problematic, this particular activity, because it's so technology limited. It actually is a problem from the term in terms of accessibility, both in the limitations on technology and the fact that there is no comparable activity um, or way to input data if you are someone who is nonverbal. Now, if I did have a student who is nonverbal in my course, I would actually be able to create a comparable activity for them where perhaps I was giving them the word and asking them like to maybe grab something from a drag and drop to fill it in. Or if I'm looking at something like a world language, and I have a nonverbal student who's taking a world language, completely possible because obviously literacy in a new language is equally as important as being able to verbally articulate the words. I could actually create an activity where someone's filling in the blank for something. So I could do some different things there to create a comparable activity for someone who is nonverbal. You know, Bill, I don't think they specifically mentioned Firefox out on the website. And I've noticed that about H5P. They'll tell you about Chrome. Um, Edge and Safari. We'll have to look and see if Firefox is mentioned. I don't recall it being mentioned at all when I was looking at the accessibility chart, but we can definitely look at that. So those are your speak the words activities. They are nice activities, but always keep in mind that there are aspects of them that will be inaccessible for users based in entirely on certain pieces of technology, but also if someone is a nonverbal user of the activity. So someone who is nonverbal in your course would not be able to have access to these. Much like we do in every other week, we're going to start with an introduction to all about speak the words activity types, and then we'll end with our Let's Create segment where we give you a walkthrough video of exactly how we've created these activities so that you get an idea of what they are, test them out, and then see how we made them. So that is what we covered last week. What opens to you coming this week? And then next week, I'm going to scroll way down. Next week, we have our wrap up webinar. Actually, we're not going to have it next week. I'm moving it. I forgot about that. We're going to move it until after we get through next week, where most of us are out on vacation, which is perfect. So I will update that calendar invite. Let me make myself a new note. And we will not have a class next week. We'll skip a week and we'll come back the week after that and we'll do our wrap up webinar. When you come back for that, in addition to seeing column open that week, you will also see timeline, the 360 image, and we'll also have an example of documentation tool in here. Also that week, when we do our wrap up, the capstone project will open for you. The capstone project is a place where you're going to create one H5P activity in your sandbox course, and you're going to give us a link to that. You're going to tell us a little bit about why you chose that activity, if it's new to you or you've used it before, and we're just going to ask a little bit about it. It is not a very lengthy or involved project, but it is how you kind of wrap up and demonstrate that you have gotten some knowledge capture and that you feel a little more comfortable creating with H5P. It's part of the competency framework for this course, which is that we kind of move from the beginning to the end. And in the end, hopefully everyone is able to create an H5P activity. Now, one of the times that we've run this course in the past, someone said, as part of their capstone, I ended up creating a very simple activity because I tried such and such activity and realized that wasn't going to work for the content. And I tried another one and realized it wouldn't work because of whatever the reasons were. And in the end, the person said, I created this other activity that's very simple. Here's the things that are wrong with it. Here's why it works and here's why it doesn't. The goal isn't necessarily that the H5P activity is perfect. It's that when you're creating it, you can recognize whether something does or doesn't fit your type, your content type. And if it doesn't, what's wrong with it? And what about H5P could be improved to make that work better for you? So really, we're just trying to see that you have become an H5P creator as we get down toward the end of the class. The course here will stay open through, typically we keep them open for 30 days. This will stay open a little longer, meaning that you will have all the way until January 17th to be able to finish your capstone project work through any of the activities in the course, and earn your badge. We're going to have that badge loaded up in there. And then what happens is you complete the activities throughout the course. And then once the capstone has been graded by Michael and I, the badge will get issued to you. And that is how it will work. So that will all stay open until January 17th. And as we typically do for this course, once you come down to the conclusion area here, let me open that just so you have an idea of what's coming up. We'll have a little feedback where you can tell us a bit about your thoughts on this course. I like to frame all of our feedback after this concept of give, take, leave. So, what one piece of information did you learn here that you would actually be able to share with someone else? What one piece of activity did you take away from here that you will keep as a takeaway? And what thing did we do in here that you think it really wasn't valuable? I could take it or leave it. And that's kind of how we'll be looking for you to give us some feedback. The other thing that's unique to a lot of our courses that we offer here is that this course, like several of our courses, offers a free 30-minute consultation. So once you've wrapped the course, you'll have an opportunity here to click the link and schedule with either myself, potentially with Michael as well, and have a 30-minute consult with us. So if you have lingering questions about H5P, about trying to move content in, or things that are working or not working well, you can schedule that consultation with us, and we're happy to meet with you. When you click on that, it's going to take you to my calendar app, and you'll be able to see my free times in there, and you'll be able to pick one that works for you. It'll create a calendar invite for both of us, and it'll generate a Google Meet link as well. So that is what you'll have to look forward to as we get to the capstone. So just a reminder that next week, no webinar. I'll get that calendar update invite updated as soon as we're done here. No webinar next week. We'll pick back up again the week after that. So enjoy your week away from us and hearing us ramble on about our love of H5P. I hope that you all have a fantastic week ahead and that it is hopefully not too cold where you are or snowy. I know for some of us it probably is. Yep, there's a lot of head nodding going on now. Yeah. But any last questions we can answer while you have us here? All right. Well, I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Thanks, Judith. We will see you all back in 2 weeks, and I'll get you that updated calendar invite. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you very much. Have a good holiday. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bill.
Bye,
You too.
everyone.